Alright, so hello, my name is Vasilios Kosmakos. Today is Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today?
Pat or Patricia and Fred Harden, Harden.
Fantastic. Now if you can both just start off with telling me a little bit about your career, kind of who you are, that type of thing.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a native Floridian, if that helps.
Hmm.
Born in South Florida, raised in West Palm Beach. Went to university. Actually, went to Palm Beach Junior College after I got out of the Navy at 52, and then graduated from the University of Florida in 1955 with a degree in agriculture with a major in medical entomology. And then, of course, I worked for the State Board of Health for a couple of years doing a mosquito study of South Florida. Then I was in charge of a mosquito control district in Fort Pierce for 8 years. And I did consulting on the side in the Caribbean. Then later on, I consulted the GE's Mission and Space Division in Mississippi, where they tested the Saturn V rockets. I was there for 7 years. And then I let space program fell apart. So I left, went for Disney in 1970 and there for 22 years.
Fantastic. And how about you, Miss Harden?
Well, I started out at the University of Florida, dropped out, had a chance to go to Europe, and I did that. And then came back, got married, had a couple of kids, and went to work for the State Board of Health in Orlando. At the time, they had a lab there, and we did in the lab the public health samples for various. We tested milk and water and for rabies and parasites and that sort of thing. And then when UCF opened, which was FTU at the time, Florida Tech, I quit job, got a loan from the government, which I paid back, by the way, and got a degree in biology ed, and I taught biology at Winter Park High School for about 3 years. I worked in the summers at UCF, one of the year that when, as he said, the space program fell apart and a number of people who had been unemployed by then by the space were up getting these retraining grants. And so I worked in the chemistry and the biology lab and retrained these engineers and whatnot. So when I graduated, I got a job teaching biology at high school at Winter Park for the 3 years. And then Disney opened, and I applied for a summer job, and I worked in the theme park at the various shops. And then they had an opening at Reedy Creek Improvement District, which is now being vilified. But at any rate, I took the job, and I was there for about 22 years and then switched over to Disney. So altogether, I was there 26 years. And I was in their environmental department, water quality, their environmental services lab, where again, we did a lot of water quality and potable water, surface waters, groundwaters, swimming pools, whatever, along with aquatic weed control and various and sundry environmental involvement like that. During that period of time, Fred and I both, because he was Disney and I was district, but we both worked on environmental permits. Disney was building Epcot, and then later on, the Animal Kingdom. But anyway, I worked on the getting the permits with DEP and the Corps, doing environmental assessments out in the field with them and whatnot. And then let's see.
We did a
We
study.
did a study on Disney owned 3 disjunct parcels over in Brevard County on the barrier island, and we did the studies for that, which they later sold to the state, which is now part of the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge. Then they sent us to California to work on a possible ski project that they were going to do up around Truckee and near Lake Tahoe. So we worked on that for about 3 years, all going back and forth between our 2 jobs. And in the meantime, through all those years, we were very involved with environmental organizations. Fred's a founding member of the Florida chapter of the Nature Conservancy. I was on their board for 40 years. He was president for a couple of times, and I was president. And then Orange Audubon, we were very active in Orange Audubon. And we kept our finger in all the environmental work going on, including we'd go to DEP to represent Disney on the various permit regulations that they were thinking about changing and that kind of thing, which, by the way, we were not opposing like might be expected. And what else? We're both founding members of Friends of the Wekiva River, which is still going. And I don't know, we've also off and on been members of the Florida Native Plant Society. And so we've been involved in a lot of environmental projects, both professionally and, as private citizens.
Yeah.
And have been, used to make many trips to Tallahassee and also appearing before the Land Acquisition Commission, it was the ARC, which used to meet. But anyhow, we supporting various land projects in the Wekiva area, which now has 60 or 70,000 acres protected. So anything from going to county commission meetings, civic club meetings, whatever. We spent a good long time doing that.
As children, we fished and hunted a lot with our parents.
Yeah.
And so you love the woods and the swamps and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, I started birding, I guess, when I was 14 or 15, I guess, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And so it's just natural to fall into that category.
Yes, and I forgot to tell you, I'm a 2nd generation Floridian. Our great grandchildren are 5th generation. They're all still living here. And yes, I too. Apparently, the family legend, at least, is that my parents took me on a hunting trip when I was about 6 or 8 months old. We were camping in the woods. And camping then was a whole different thing. When we got older, my cousin and I got to cut the palmetto fronds and stack them up. And you put a blanket over theirs and made a tarp lean-to and kept the fire going all night so the wild pigs wouldn't come into camp. We had a Coleman lantern, but it was gas. It was not propane like it is now. So we didn't even have a tent. So the tents were heavy waxed canvas.
Yes.
So
I think they call that primitive camping nowadays, right? But
it would
Oh, yeah.
definitely be primitive camping nowadays. So
We had an RV for a number of years. That made
Yeah.
much more pleasant camping.
yes, we did. We took a 6-month trip to Alaska and back after we both retired, and had various things like that, looking at the national parks and birding and places of local interest. So I'm afraid the environment, I guess we bleed green.
Yeah, most of what we knew about Florida is now gone.
Mhm. Yeah.
Paid over. It's very discouraging because
Yeah. Yeah, the Florida we knew is
gone.
long gone. And
So-
even the Florida my kids knew. I mean, it's disappearing so fast that even the grandsons notice things that in their lifetime that have
Yeah.
disappeared. So,
so discuss that a bit more, right? So what have been the most
Sure.
dramatic kind of changes you've seen? I mean, specifically with the waterways.
well, obviously, I'm sure you've heard and read this. The springs, as said, are windows into our drinking water, which is a separate subject from what you just asked. But the springs that we saw that were crystal clear, I mean, like a glass of water, and now they've got a greenish tint. Most of them have lost flow. Silver Springs used to be a first magnitude. I think it's about a third now. In fact, we're taking a field trip there tomorrow. But I went there as a child, took my kids there, and we took the grandsons there. And the changes,
Dramatic.
when we were there after it became a state park, we took a group from here. And there used to be just a mat of flowing eelgrass, and the mullet jumped everywhere, the glass bottom boats, the fish would just swim. You never had to worry about seeing a fish. They covered it. They even had a white sand swimming beach there with the dive tower back then. But when we went back and got on the glass bottom boat, we almost cried.
Really?
The bottom there are hardly any grasses. It was full of algae growing on the bottom. You saw a few fish. Of course, the Ocklawaha, the Rodman Dam, was a disaster for the river too, and the fish, and that manatees, the whole shooting match. But yet there were a couple people on the boat I think they were from out of state, or maybe they'd never been. Oh, isn't this beautiful? And, we're sitting there practically with tears in our eyes. But it gives you the problem that if people don't know what was there, they only know what they see. And if they have nothing, it's like running an experiment. If you don't have a control, how do you know what you really got? And they just didn't see it, and they don't know. And it makes you want to cry. Wekiwa Springs, which of course we were very active with that group, and it's getting greenish, and it was not that way when it just lawns, septic fertilizers, septic tanks, agriculture, and then the legacy. Even when the groves are gone that put in so much nitrogen and phosphorus, it takes it a long time to move through the groundwater. So it leaves, they call it legacy nutrients. But so, yeah, we've seen a lot.
We were involved with Indian River a lot.
Yeah, that too.
And it was one of the major systems that were intact. It's now 96% of the aquatic grasses have died.
and the manatees are starving because that's what they came to eat. We've set a record this year, 1,000-some manatees. And we both, well, I grew up on the Indian River, Fort Pierce. I was born in the center part of the state, but we moved there when I was young. And, we saw the river when you could actually see the bottom, and schools of mullet by the hundreds would jump. And it was, in fact, the old timers, not during my childhood, but prior to that, they'd just put a lantern in their rowboat. The mullet would jump in the boat. They'd be going through the schools. And yeah, I mean, we have no idea how we've impacted our own food chain, and it will come back to bite us.
Yeah, already has.
So let's kind of discuss the more policy kind of side of things. From my understanding, from the previous interviews you've done, you've kind of worked quite a bit with DEP, you've worked quite a bit with the water management districts, etc. I mean, kind of discuss how that kind of cultural policy has changed. Specifically, you mentioned how, ever since, really ever since Reagan, right, and Dukakis, it's kind of been a schism that's kind of existed.
It has.
Yeah, discuss that a little bit more.
Well, I was on the water management board for 8 years. I chaired it for 2, the St. John's.
What year was this?
91 to 99, when Childs was governor.
Yeah.
We worked as Friends of the Wekiva. We appeared many times before the Water Management District regarding permits, consumptive use permits, groundwater, water quality. We approached them because we were concerned. And actually, the Friends of the Wekiva, I'll back up a little bit, in working with the St. John's, which back then, it wasn't perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. But overall, I would say, at least at the worst, the water resources broke even. Now it's like 70-30 maybe, if that. But we managed, working with that particular district during the 80s, and that to get the Wekiva River Protection Act, the Wekiva River Protection Zone, and it's the most protected river on paper in the state.
Yeah.
It also, we helped work and get, first thing we did was get Outstanding Florida Waters designation. And
our application weighed 19 pounds.
Yeah, they said it was the most thorough application they'd ever had. But then we let's see what else. There was that. Well, anyway, a number of protections that we got for it. And then going back to the Water Management Board, it mostly, early on, it was mostly agriculture, because they were old drainage districts, some of them and whatnot. But they understood that they needed water, and, all the ditches, dikes, and whatnot that had been done weren't helping. They had to figure out how to manage that. Of course, they put in a few more, but then
Well, the board makeup was different because now it's mostly developers.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying. It slowly, during, with Askew and Graham and Collins and them, they were decent. And Childs, the board that I was on was pretty evenly weighed against people who cared about the the environment. And we had agriculturists on there who were at least, cared. We had a couple of developers and some business people. So the culture, and we had a staff and we had enforcement, and we increased the millage two or three times to get the work done, the restoration work done, like on Lake Apopka, which had been totally destroyed by agriculture. And so I would say during those years, the resource did pretty well, because there were bad permits that were turned down, or there were permits that had stronger requirements on them, or mitigation or whatever. When Bush got in, and then they changed the length of the term, and it used to be when a new governor came in, he got to appoint, the 5 and then 4, and then, but they changed it to 2 and 2 and 2. I mean, everything was staggered so that you'd still, if you were not reelected, you'd still have your people on the board for a while. Anyway, that was one change. And it turned a little more.
I'm sorry, you said this was on Bush made those changes, you said, correct?
Jeb.
Okay, Jeb
Yeah,
Bush.
when Jeb, yeah. And then Martinez was pretty good prior to that. He was a Republican governor. He understood a lot of things about it, and it's just kind of, with Scott, it was pretty much a disaster. Because when he came in, he appointed people and they purged the staff of all the districts, of DEP, of anybody. If a developer contributor said, that person held up or stopped one of my permits, I mean, this is even down into the supervisory ranks, that person got laid off. They ran off people from their general counsel on down the line. And she was the best general counsel of all 5 water management districts. But, it was like a vengeance thing, which we're still seeing. It's just gotten worse through national and state government.
Even under DeSantis?
Yes, DeSantis. DeSantis appointees are mostly business developer or some big ag, but there are a couple that aren't too bad. But now they've cut the millage. They started that with Bush, actually, but Scott for sure. So they can't do the projects that they can't finish the restoration projects, or they cut back on, they'll deny it. They've cut back on regulation. They've sped up the time that the permit has to be released. They don't used to every monthly meeting. It was open to the public. The board was there. Any permits over a certain amount, they came up. If there was anybody there to complain about it, they were all allowed to speak. We had public workshops around for anything major changes around the district. And now it's all under the control of, the board. The board meetings, they don't even last. Ours maybe used to last like a whole day. Now they're there and they're gone, because a lot of permits now can just be approved without any, unless somebody fusses about it. Same way with changes to state parks. Used to be the ARC people met, periodically, and they review state plans, whatnot. Now you get an email, and unless 2 people object, it can't be heard. One can't do it. Has to be at least two. And
Two citizens or two what?
two people, two citizens or whatever, and they have to, request. And he didn't even fill out Desantis. I'm not sure if Scott did or not, but our Desantis didn't even finish filling the positions on the Environmental Regulation Commission, which has been used to go over all the regulations and have public workshops for proposals. None of that. He didn't even, I don't think they've met maybe but once. You don't even hear about it if they do, and they don't have anything to do. It's all central control. It's all central control. We called up to get a speaker here who worked for a state agency. And they said, well, yeah, we're sure we can do it, but we have to run it by the governor's office. The governor. This is just to come here and give a talk, on the state park or something. But, that it couldn't be controversial, critical, anything like that. And it's like I said, I'm sorry. We were both kids during World War II. And I guess I shouldn't say it on tape, but it appears to me we are getting every day closer to total authoritarianism by our government. And if people don't wake up to it, they think it's great because it's what they want, but they don't realize, just like the Germans, then it may have been what they wanted, but in the end, it wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah, actually, the governor now takes away from cities and counties the authority they used to have.
Yeah.
They had a wonderful tree ordinance here.
Yeah.
They took it away. So the legislature makes the decision on
Yeah.
whether a tree gets cut. Well, that doesn't work.
Yeah. We had a
Insane.
wonderful tree ordinance to protect or replant, but they delegated it to a licensed landscaper or a landscape architect, which, yes, you're paying me thousands of dollars for this development, but I'm going to tell you, you can't move that tree.
So
No way.
I don't think so.
discuss the significance of that, because that's something that I think we're definitely seeing a lot more of, where we're taking a lot. The state government is taking a lot of power away from localities.
Yeah,
and
it is.
cities, etc.
Yeah.
I think it happened quite a bit on COVID as well. I mean, especially. So it's like, why is that so important? Just in general, and also why is that so significant with environmental issues?
Well, environmentally, like we know the ocean's getting filled with microplastics. We know they're everywhere. So a county now cannot pass a ban on plastic shopping bags. They can't protect their trees. What did they do? Oh Lord, there was about 6 things in this past legislature that took more county power away.
Yeah.
You can't tell kids to wear masks. Well, they don't work. Well, really? That's not what science says, but we don't believe in science anymore.
No, there's anti-science.
We believe what our politicians tell us, who may have been house painters before they were elected, but we won't believe what a trained scientist for 40 years tells us, So there is the fertilizer ordinance. They passed that. I mean, the Indian River's dying partly because of all the mountain fertilizer, to say nothing of stormwater and sewage spills that seem to happen, particularly from Satellite Beach a lot. But they took away that. They passed fertilizer ordinance, so did Orange County, and they said, you can't do that. They passed a law. You can't do that. Well, I'm getting big contributions from those people who want to sell more fertilizer and that kind of thing. So yes, it's impacting the environment. Frankly, I'm surprised that cities and counties haven't brought a lawsuit. I think it's unconstitutional the way they've attacked home rule, because that is in the Constitution. And the only reason I can figure out that maybe they're not is because they still depend on the state for a lot of dollars, and Desantis will just take the dollars away. And that's authoritarianism. That's dictatorship. And I don't care what else you want to call it. That's what it is.
They used to say we have the best legislature money can buy.
Yeah, we still do.
I mean, that's what it appears to be going on because, I mean, during COVID, right?
Yes.
with Stuff, I mean, that's what DeSantis pretty much said, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
don't do what we're saying, and I'm not giving you
Yeah.
the cash. I'm from Pinellas County, so it's like, which was, more liberal, and that's what was happening. Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah. And so they took away $2 million from the Alachua School Board and whatever other counties opposed the mask. Now, how is that legal? That's blackmail.
Yeah, I think it's important to call things what they are, and that's exactly what that is.
That's right. It's the lies that are being spread that they believe, like these terrible things, siding with Russia about Ukraine, and it's frightening. It's frightening. So
there was an article in Scientific American about a month ago that said the anti-science people, no matter how much evidence you show them, they won't believe it. They're convinced, or whatever it is, that anything that science says is wrong.
Yeah.
So how do you change that whole segment of our society? I don't know.
You can't.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing I think a paradigm shift in more ways than one.
We are. It's power is leaving the people and going to the government, and that's never a good thing, particularly when one party gets total control, which may happen this year or 24. And if it does, then I don't know.
If you watch how Hitler got power, they're following the same playbook.
Yeah. Yeah, just read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich and how it started out the same way. Economy, which it was bad. France is as much to blame for World War II in a way because of the Treaty of Versailles.
Yeah.
It was draconian. But in fact, the historian here says World War II is just an extension of World War I.
Yes.
And so, but still, and then the economy, and then to find somebody to blame it on. Well, in our case, Hispanics, in their case, Jews. And of course, Jews are getting their fair defaced cemeteries and whatnot too. And it just traces right on down the line. And he attacked the standing government. He attacked the courts. He attacked the free press. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things specifically, within the context of water quality is that, like kind of like you were mentioning earlier, it was more or less bipartisan. I mean, it's like,
Yes.
Yes.
with the exception of Rick Scott. I mean, Bush, was pro-environment. I mean, it's like a Martinez pro-environment. I mean, all these people. So it's like, I just don't understand why that cultural shift has happened, because it's like, and even if you look at by the issue, right? I mean, like environmental issues, issue by issue, are pulling at 60, 70, 80, 90%. I mean,
All right.
across the board. And
Right.
why do you think there's been such a discrepancy between what's happening at the policy level and what's happening at the individual kind of belief level?
Can you see that?
And they want to get reelected.
Well, the thing I think, and you're right, we could have never have gotten the protections for the Wekiva that we got with this government. Back then, they might disagree, but they worked together. They knew how to compromise. They all agreed the Wekiva was a treasure, you know, and so they approved it in 1972 with the Water Resources Act. It was bipartisan. It was, you know, because people recognized that we couldn't keep polluting our water supply. We couldn't keep overdrawing water, which we're still doing, and we needed wetlands and that type of thing. You'd never get this legislature to appoint that. And the only thing that I find explains it is that big money has gotten control of everything and everybody. And when Supreme Court did that Citizens United thing, that killed, I mean, that killed it. Corporations or individuals, excuse me, you know, but anyhow, but yes, you want to ask why? I think it's because people who wanted power and who wanted the ability to develop easier or whatever worked even maybe behind the scenes to handpick people who would do what they wanted if they got elected. And it's showing.
And explain who, you know, and feel free to say or not say, all right, feel free to answer or not answer this question, but explain who you think the big kind of big money people are in Florida. You know, which groups or which people, you know, kind of are the obstacles in the way of kind of some of the progress that we're seeing.
Well,
72% voted for that, to buy more land.
I know, that's what he was saying.
And they did.
No, he's wanting to know who we think are the movers and shakers. And
if you're comfortable answering that question.
Yeah, I it appears on the surface that it would be people like the Florida Chamber or people within the Florida Chamber. And of course, Big Ag, because those are now. Tourism is, sugar, of course, which is part of Big Ag, but tourism is still our major industry. But the theme parks, they contribute to the parties, but until Disney did this brilliant thing, I don't think they have really pushed or moved a lot of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Continually, there may be one or two places that they didn't want this or that, and they might tell the regulators or something. But for the most part, I mean, when we were there, which of course is a old time now, but when we were there, Disney didn't fight environmental regulations unless they were draconian. You know, if they had a question, that's when we went up there and we'd sit down with the staff. But it was never like a threat, like we're going to get the governor after you or anything like that. So now, are there people from out of state? Quite possible. There could be, you know, corporations, developer, corp types, but they're well behind the scenes. Is there somebody or something behind the scenes to help get DeSantis into the presidency? Would you be surprised? So I don't know that for sure. That's just first blush.
He created his own police department now. That reports only to him.
Right.
Like brown shirts.
His election police to monitor elections. And that's another just playing to the Trump didn't really lose crowd, because you know this, they must have recounted the ballots 3 times in Georgia, 3 times in Pennsylvania, 3 times in Arizona. And even with equal number of Republicans on the recount. They didn't find anything. And Florida, if they were going to do this, they should have done it when Bush ran against Gore, because if any funny things went on in Florida then, it was then.
Yeah.
So it's just another way of intimidating people, which of course impacts the environment in the long run, because the more people you get in there who, this state, the resources, water in particular, is going to end up being a big problem. And they're still just pushing away sea level rise around Miami and whatnot as much as they can. But Mother Nature really doesn't care. So they can raise the roads, which will act as dams to hold the water in the houses. They can pump water from here to there, but eventually it's, it's like swatting at windmills. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So, let's kind of break down this whole agriculture versus development kind of thing a bit more, right? So, you kind of mentioned that agriculture is a big issue in some parts, right? Development is also seems to be a big issue in other parts. Would you agree with that statement? Do you think that agriculture is more of an issue to water quality in some areas and development is more of an issue to other areas? Do you think they're equal players? On the state, break that down a little bit more.
I would,
Green lawn.
up here where there's more agriculture, it probably does have a bigger impact on the Santa Fe and the Swanee and whatnot.
Agriculture.
Yeah, but in the South and even Central Florida, they have found that water use, the main largest percent, even when I was on the board, was urban. And the amount of fertilizer on all this worthless St. Augustine grass that they put in every development, which also requires a lot of insecticides. I would say that in some areas on the surface water, that stormwater and runoff from lawns and things is probably the bigger issue.
Septic tanks.
I mean, you don't have much agriculture left in Broward and Dade, and you don't have a lot of agriculture left around the Orlando area, particularly. You get the legacy nutrients, but you're still getting the nutrients. Septic tanks, or, they're septic tanks, stormwater, and the ag and fertilizer, probably across the whole state.
So particularly in South Florida, though, because this project did do research down there as well. We're seeing a lot of algae growth, right? Specifically in the Keys, right? Specifically in Everglades, right? Is that some people blame agriculture, specifically big sugar, right? So, do you think that there's a connection between agriculture, specifically in South Florida, as a result of, creating that kind of algae problem over there? Or do you think that's more of a
I'm not, we're not as familiar with the things down there, but they put in a lot of drainage canals and things which tend to grow algae anyway. So any nutrients that get in there, they're going to build this big reservoir south of the lake, which some people think is wonderful, but north of the lake, from what I understand from a lot of scientists up this way, north of the lake is where most of the pollution's coming from. It's coming from agriculture, septic tanks, and fertilizer from Orlando down, from the Kissimmee headwaters down into the lake. And that's what's impacting the lake. And then, of course, you have the battle between sugar on how much water they can have, and the Corps, how much do we need to release, how many wet hurricanes will we get. And I think that battle's going to go on for many more years.
Yeah.
But many people think the reservoir is just probably, some people say, and again, I don't have the expertise or not up to date on that. Some people say that it's just going to be a big algae sink. So we'll see. I don't know.
Look at satellite photographs of the Everglades National Park area.
Yeah.
You can see where the water used to go.
Yeah.
The islands turn and flow towards the southwest. So all of that area was freshwater.
Yeah.
With saltwater intrusion, it's going to become mangrove.
Yeah.
So that's going to be they haven't faced up to that yet. They're talking about trying to save the Everglades, but they got to worry, how are they going to handle the saltwater intrusion?
Yeah, because it will come from below surface as well as, it's subsurface salt intrusion, as well as the ocean rising. Actually, I read a report years ago by University of Miami has been studying that down there for many years. Can't remember the professor's name. He's probably long retired now, but he was an expert. And there were islands on the southwest side that they used to farm, but they can't anymore because it's too salty and saltwater tolerant plants are growing. Now, this was years ago. And so there are all kinds of changes going on there. Most of them have been caused by us, of course. There's no place that man has set foot that he hasn't left a negative impact. That includes the moon. Left his trash behind. But I mean, if you think about it, if you look through history, it's,
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because even if you go to Cedar Key, Yankeetown, etc., right? I mean, we're seeing the saltwater intrusion as well. That directly has an impact on our springs, right? Because it creates this backflow of tannins that kind of go up the river. That creates lack of dissolved oxygen, which is we're saying is problematic. So, I mean, it seems like kind of this water quantity issue where we're pumping out our stuff, right, is kind of really hampering, a lot of more things to one, across our state.
Yeah. Well, you remember you brought up Cedar Key, and a few years ago they had to truck in water because their wells all went salt, and they had to drill wells further west for drinking water. Miami's had to do the same thing. All the coastal counties, and it's so the more fresh water you withdraw, it's not like people say, oh, well, we have the underground river from Georgia and the Carolinas. Well, excuse me, it may flow, but it's something, if it flows like 2 inches a year.
Rainfall.
I mean, it's not a river just
a trickle,
flowing under there. And it all depends on rainfall. And we're continuing to repave recharge areas. See, in the Wakaiba Protection Act, whatever you build, you have to handle your post runoff can't be any different than your pre-development. So you pre-post have to match, but most developments don't do that unless you're in those areas. And then it has to be enforced. And if you don't have staff, or staff's afraid to, that's another problem.
So let's talk about some of the policy initiatives you guys have been involved with. If memory serves correctly, I think you, Mr. Harden, were involved in a significant piece of legislation that passed, right? Or am I misremembering?
Well, unless you're talking about the Wakaiba legislation.
Yeah, I think that might be
that might have been it, but yeah. So it was a different world then.
Yes.
So discuss your role in that.
The Wekiva.
Yeah, how that came about in the policy and whatnot.
Well, we met with, for instance, there were 4 counties. We had to deal with 4 county commissioners and convince them to support what we wanted to do. And they did. Some of them were total Republicans, some were all Democrat, but they saw what was coming and said, well, all right, let's all get together and support that. Then we had legislators who felt the same way. And we had a governor that thought that was a good idea. And so it wouldn't pass now. It did then, because the people in charge of making those decisions were sort of bipartisan. They worked together to get a compromise, and it worked out fine.
And we laid a lot of groundwork. The Friends of Wekiva is not and never has been an organization that would chain themselves to a tree,
No.
throw themselves in front of a bulldozer. And we didn't go out and make wild charges. We studied, we found as much information as we could from the Water Management District and from the counties. Orange, it was really Orange, Seminole, and Lake that we were involved in, the 3 counties. And we put together a technical report and we published it. And one of the big developers in the area actually paid for it. But anyway, and it was called the Wekiva River, a resource endangered. And we distributed that, and it had everything in it. It had historical data, species list, water quality, water quantity, USGS, the whole bit, socioeconomic. And we distributed it to all of the legislators, to the head of what was DNR then and DER. And we went to each county and met in a workshop with the commissioners and their staff. So we laid the groundwork. And it wasn't just Fred and me. There were a handful of people who were involved in it, working. And so that when it got to the legislation to where we could talk about a bill, we went to the Water Management District, of course. They knew, and they knew what we were talking about. They didn't. In fact, we found an old USGS report that showed the salt tongue moving up the Wekiva River. And the county didn't know anything about it. They'd paid for it, but it was several years old, and they were all new commissioners, and the staff had to go looking for it. And the county even said, okay, they've given all this stuff. How accurate is it? And the staff said, it's 99%. So our credibility was established.
Science.
And science. And that's what gave us back then, because the legislatures still respected science and respected being respected and approached in a respectful manner. And I don't think, no matter how good we did it now, if we were trying to do it, it would happen.
Because we worked with staff and all the legislators and the county commission, convinced staff of what we were talking about. So they tend to ask their staff, what do you guys think about this? And they say, well, we think it's a pretty good idea. But you had to go through the whole system.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the State Committee for Wetlands 1977 at all, or was that before you?
The committee.
Yes, we monitored that back when Senator Graham was a state senator.
He had what was that called?
Elms Committee.
The Elms Committee, Environmental Lands Management, something, or I don't know remember all that, but it was Elms. Yeah, he was on Elms.
Yeah, and Disney sent me up there to monitor that. And so that we would make sure we were in the same ballpark if we thought the legislature was going to be.
But you were on the actual committee.
Yeah, I was on Regional Planning
subcommittee. Yeah.
Regional
Yeah.
Planning Council in Orange, Seminole, Osceola County.
Yeah.
And so I represented Reedy Creek Improvement District because we were part of the system. But I think then we had the newspaper and radio people, television on our side. That was a big difference. That if they said we need a program, I said we'll give you anything you want, as long as we get it out to the public. Make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
But
we had, going back to the Wekiva, when we were doing that, we did the Sentinel, Jane Healy, who was the editor then, won a Pulitzer Prize for her article on the Wekiva. She ran a series of articles and it won a Pulitzer Prize. And we had all kinds of live interviews on TV, and we opposed a pretty big development on this piece of land that was the Wekiva, and we raised a fit, a controlled fit. We went to the hearings on that. And then I was talking to a friend of mine in Arizona, and she said, "Oh, those are the guys out here that got caught in a RICO act." So we reported that, and it ended up they were RICO, and the state got the land. So sometimes serendipity is the best. But so policies were different. I don't know that because they keep weakening. They've weakened the I mean, this is provable. It's in the books. They've weakened regulation. They've weakened the agencies. They've, weakened the rules. They've intimidated the staff. They've gotten rid of staff that didn't, or put them in a basement somewhere. And things aren't as open, even though we have government sunshine. I don't think people don't feel comfortable or welcome or even encouraged to give their opinions. And it was just totally different. It was night and day.
Yeah.
So elaborate on that a bit more, though. How are things weaker, and then why don't you think things are open? I mean, give me some examples.
Well, it's pretty obvious that they can't work together. Congress doesn't work together. The legislature, the Democrats don't have a chance. They're not, nothing. The governor, once he wants something, that's the way it's going to be, no matter who opposes it, or the constitutional amendments that have been passed, as you brought up, and they've been basically ignored. The land acquisition, the funds to go to it when we voted off the top of my head, I can't give you specific rules and whatnot, but I think, again, the attack on the tree ordinances and things like that, the fact that enforcement is almost non-existent, and there's violations out there, the fact that permits just get issued. How long since you've heard of any big permit being denied or even held up for something? Consumptive use permits continue to be granted, even though the Wekiva has a certain level to which they're supposed to address, but the rule is written such that, well, how will you know when you get there? Well, we'll see this or that, or we'll just know, or we'll see stress. Well, by the time you see that, it's too late. So, and any of our friends that used to work for the agencies or things, they talk about how different it is, and that kind of how things have changed, and it's not friendly toward the customer, us, and you just face a really hard time to get any changes or anything like that.
Well, the governor trying to change the voting districts.
Yeah, well, he did.
His latest thing now did away with, I think, 2 black congressmen.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
it's blatant. It's not
Even that's pretty unconstitutional, because
Yeah.
the legislature is supposed to do, the committee of people is supposed to do the redistricting. But he said, no, this is my plan. And they said, no, it's not a good plan. Well, we see how they buckled under, and oh yeah, now it's a wonderful plan.
Well, and I think this is an important point to bring it up, right? Because it's like, I think superficially, it's really easy to see that, hey, we have sunshine laws and things aren't as
Yeah.
corrupt, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
But you bring up very powerful points, right? It seems like it seems that way in the surface, but through the way we've restructured our power systems, through
Yeah.
just the amount of power that is being taken away from the individual
Yes.
level. I mean, it's like, so you have these things that exist on paper, right? But they're not actually being actualized practically.
Right.
So it's almost like the illusion of freedom, but you're not, like I said, the things are kind of happening a little bit, are becoming blatantly more corrupt, shadier.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah.
systematically subtle.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
just
I mean,
if you look at news, I mean, even on your phone or wherever that you see things happening, don't you see more and more that the power is going to the central government? It was doing that when Trump was in office nationally. And if you're paying attention, you're seeing that happen at the state level. It's more and more control is going to the government.
That, and I think another also important point is that even if you look at some of the data that exists, right, some of the science, and I'm not an expert, can initially speak on this, but I mean, if you look at some of the best management practices, some of the BMPs, I mean, those are the science is being influenced by institutions like the University of Florida, which kind of have corporate money behind some of their projects, etc. So it's like even the science isn't necessarily being as objective as it should be in certain regards,
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we've had BMPs for many years, but the water quality of the Santa Fe hasn't really improved that much. Just to put it up this way. Now, I think some of the farms closer have cleaned up, and they're doing some things, but you don't see any mega water quality changes for the good across the state.
Yeah, and the data shows that, importantly.
Yeah.
So this isn't conspiratorial. I mean, this is just blatant
No,
reality.
Well, the Regional Planning Council, the state used to control large developments. So they had to address impact they caused.
Oh, yeah.
And they did away with that whole system. It was very well planned.
Yeah.
And so that we can control growth and it wouldn't destroy everything.
Well, they did away with the Department of Community Affairs.
Yes.
And that was where if you had a master plan for your state, your county, city, or for a huge development, it went to DCA to be looked at, because they've done away with some of the impact fees now. You're getting all this development, there's no impact fees for schools or roads, hospitals, utilities, and we're picking up the freight, or they're falling apart, that kind of thing. And it's and they just abolished the whole department.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I remember they were planning this big development on the lake side of the county, lake side of the Wekiva, Lake County. And the county had rewritten their county growth management plan, because that's what DCA had to approve. And it was taking away a lot of wetland protections and things. And we were the Friends were raising a fuss about it. And the DCA came back and said, you need to rewrite the plan. Now, under today's government,
Never happened.
That would have gone right through. In fact, the Sentinel ran an article on, it was a cartoon, and there's a giant alligator with his mouth open. And I think it had Lake County, you know, somebody right there. And it said DCA. And the gator was saying, "You're going to do what with wetlands?" It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't see that happening now.
And
You know.
and who got rid of DCA? What governor was that?
That was under, it was under Graham and Childs and even Martinez. Can't
Yeah.
remember exactly when it was implemented.
I think under
80s, 70s, 80s.
probably under not Graham, but under
Askew?
Askew.
And
Is
Might
Askew-
have been, yeah.
He passed a lot of water.
Yeah, he did. Because a
legislation.
lot of in the 70s, that was when a lot of that stuff happened. And
and when was it
Tom-
removed? I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay. Tom Pelham was head of DCA, and when he got appointed, the environmentalists were kind of like, we're not so sure about this, because he'd been an attorney for a lot of developers.
Hmm.
He turned out to be the best DCA
Yeah.
head we ever had because he was a good attorney. He worked for his client, and his client was now the state. And well, that's true. A good attorney works for their client, and not for politics or what they think should be. They work for their client, and he was very good. And
Yeah.
but the developers didn't like it, and that's why the city here now, Gainesville and Alachua County, their growth management plan. It's like, what does it really mean? And
Not much anymore.
yeah, so
And
It's-
when was the DCA kind of abolished? Because you said it doesn't exist.
it
anymore.
was under, was it Bush or Scott?
Scott, I think.
Trying to think, 10 years
Probably
ago.
both of them, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not very good with dates. You could check it easy enough. Google could tell you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Fair
but-
enough, right?
Yeah, but it was under a Republican governor, but it wasn't Martinez, and
No,
I don't think it was Bush.
I don't either.
If it was in the middle of it. But anyhow,
So-
yeah,
Let's discuss Jeb Bush a bit more, because
Yeah.
he seems to be an interesting character. I mean, obviously, right? He started up the Florida Springs Initiative, right, as a result of Jim Stevenson.
yeah.
Actually, just interviewed Jim about 2 days ago, so that was a wonderful interview.
Jim Stevenson.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Wonderful.
He knows the history.
Absolutely. But then you kind of mentioned that Jeb Bush was responsible for restructuring the way the districts worked in the,
I think it was under him. And again, Bush and Scott come in there together, but the terms used to be 5 and 4 when a governor was elected. And you could only serve 2 3-year terms.
as a
But they were staggered so that
I'm sorry, serve as what?
on the board
Okay, a normal
of the water management district.
Okay.
But when they came in, they changed it to like 2 and then 2 and then 2. And basically what would happen under that is, and it could work for the good if you had a good board, but if you had like Scott come in, it meant it would take longer to get rid of his appointees or a bad governor's appointees, is what I'm saying. When instead of 5 one year and 4 the next, you get 2 and then 2 and then 2 and they did away under Scott with the term limits on the board. They had a guy on there who, I don't know how many, he was on there several years, and you could only serve 2 years as chair, and then they rotate it. I think he served 6, and it was interesting, but I won't go into that.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
To say it's discouraging is
Yeah.
a big word.
Yeah. And for those of us who've spent, well, not just growing up here, but have spent most of our live professional careers trying and our outside years trying to protect, or conserve, it's pretty discouraging.
Yeah.
It was like when Scott tried to build golf courses on the state parks. I mean, in that race, I think Jack Nicklaus was going to do one in St. Augustine, and there was such a fuss raised that he backed out in a hurry. And then he was going to open it to cattle and hunting and
Timber.
logging. Well, Jim Stevenson got a group of people together here, conservationists that he knew, and we ended up, long story short, formed a group called Protect Payne's Prairie. And it ended up being about 8 or 9 of us. And we would meet and we discussed how can we deal with this, and yakety yak. We ended up having a rally at first magnitude. Turned out to be the coldest darn day of the year. But we invited people to come. First magnitude said they'd give out some free beer, whatever. And we had county commissioners speak, and I don't know if Jim Stevenson was there or not, but different people. I spoke, and then we brought poster boards and pencils and markers, and they made their own poster. We had about 300 people show up.
Wow.
It was between 200 and 300 people.
Whole stadium.
Babies and strollers, old people. And of course, we were on TV while this is going down. And we walked after all the rally, we walked the 1 mile from first magnitude to the corner of Main and University. And we filled all 4 corners with those posters and protect the prairie, and cars would honk their horn and raise their thumbs. And I was told later by the state park manager, who's no longer there, of Payne's Prairie, he was in Tallahassee at the time. He said that we were the most hated group in Tallahassee. And we said, yes.
Yeah.
That sounds like a victory to me.
We love it. That's a gold medal, So that was pretty good. That was just, a few years ago when Scott was in office. But yeah, so it's kind of been a wild ride, ups and downs and goods and bads. And I don't know what's to come. Oh, we'd have probably all been arrested if we'd done it now. They passed that law. If you're protesting, you can get arrested and be charged with felony, even if you're not doing anything. Well, none of us threw any rocks or sticks or anything, but I suppose he'd send his own private police force to come get us now. I don't know.
But I was chair of the first committee in HPC. I was 29 years old. Long time ago. So I've been in that since I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
It's just discouraging.
And I got involved actually at UCF with something Audubon sponsored, some kind of activity, and the science, the biology and whatnot took part in it. And of course, I'd always cared about the environment, but that's where I first got involved and got really active. So, but yeah.
In the last interview, right, when one of my coworkers asked, what advice do you have to any, environmental activist, I think you said something along the lines of, go depend on them all because, they have their laws or whatever. Kind of discuss that point a bit more. I mean, it's kind of inspiring, kind of young environmentalist. I mean,
I'm sorry, repeat what he said.
you said something along the lines of like move to Panama because it's just so bad.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well,
that was a pretty funny comment. I mean, because it's like,
I know.
you're not kidding.
Well,
And like,
it's just, I think it's so discouraging, like I said, to see so much of what could still be saved being lost, and no effort really being made unless it's a local group.
mm,
And the fact that we're getting what we call the brown shirt police, the control with the state, it just seems more and more rights of people outside of Tallahassee are being stomped on.
Yeah.
And that was the point, the way things are going, and the fact that people can't seem to disagree respectfully, which we did when we were doing the Friends stuff, and even when the Nature Conservancy on certain things. You could disagree, and you could have a strong, active argument, but you didn't hate each other.
No.
You didn't call names, and you didn't leave the room calling somebody a communist or a socialist or whatever. And to me, the way our country is, the whole country and our state in particular, or one of them, of this, we're hating each other, and we all belong to the same country.
Yes.
And we all probably have basically a similar background if you go far enough back. I mean, we're all immigrants.
Yes.
And it was just like, is there any place? Well, I think it wouldn't be Panama. I'd probably go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
We were there, and it's beautiful. Yeah, we were there for a month, but I'm too old, so I guess we're stuck here. But it's just so hard. It's so hard to see a country that was so together, like during World War II, and so neighbors looking after neighbors, and it was more like a big community, and now we're just a big crowd.
And an example is in Seminole County, where we used to live. One of the developer attorneys was the big Republican in the county, and he and I would argue about his project. He gets through, he says, "Let's go have lunch."
Yeah.
After we just
right
fought each other, then well, good, let's go have lunch. So that was the difference.
Yeah.
That was the big, you don't do that.
And then he told us, I can't remember, something about the Wakaiba, or he was leaving whatever, I don't know. And he said, if the Friends ever need help, let me know.
An attorney.
And he had been on the cross the fence almost the whole time. But he was sincere.
Yeah.
He would have. And it's just different. And it's not pleasant. To us old folks, we weren't brought up to hate.
No.
We just weren't. Most of us, I guess some were, but we weren't.
We were in a segregated society together.
Yeah, we were in a segregated society, but we didn't, I don't know, we didn't hate blacks. We didn't, we didn't. And when they integrated, we didn't go march and spit and holler. It's just, it had to come. It should have come. We were brought up, treat people the way you want to be treated. Yeah. And, if they're not treating you that, just walk away from them, ignore them, stay away.
I think it's really, I'm someone that definitely believes in the, inherent benevolence of humankind, right? I think that at the core of our being, we're good. We are a good benevolent species. I mean, I think to be bad is quite literally to be unhuman. I mean, we want to be gregarious. We want to be what we are. If we were if we weren't, if we weren't bad. I mean, if you were bad, you were ostracized, right? I mean, so it's like, I think it's, even though it's incredibly hard sometimes given the political climate, I think it's
Yeah,
always, you have to keep your eye on the prize. You have to understand that we are good,
yeah,
we are good people. I mean, people are generally fantastic individuals. They're kind individuals.
Yes.
I think,
they
you know,
can be.
they can be, absolutely.
Yeah, we could have another discussion about all that one day, a
Yeah,
philosophical discussion.
yeah,
But you're right, they can be. And if the environment in which they're brought up and in which they live encourages that, then they can be very good and do
Yeah.
very good things. Absolutely. So it's,
yeah.
We worry about who's going to carry the flag when we're gone, because kids today are more hung up on their
he's talking about environment. Yeah.
on the environment. They're not out in the woods fishing or doing things like that. They're watching a screen and they're
Playing games.
playing games. So who is going to be there to stand up and protect the environment, because they don't know anything about it to begin with?
Well, that's a good question for you. Turn around the interviewee, Vasilio, is I noticed that you're president of the Student Wildlife Federation
Wildlife Society, yeah,
Society. Yeah.
former
So
president. We just ended.
what do you see in your generation?
Tough question.
I think that I think every single one of us needs to pull our fair weight and our fair share, and stick up for what, and I think all of us need to pull our fair weight, and I think all of us, and I think the groundwork is there. I just think we need the means to kind of go about doing the work that we need to go. But I think overall things are more positive than negative.
Good.
How
Hope so.
about for the environment and their interest? I mean, I'm assuming your society, they'd have some interest, but
I
are
think
they
there's a lot,
ready to advocate for it?
I think there's a lot of naturalists, um, but in my personal opinion, I think there needs to be more activists.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They may not want to testify
Well,
before the board.
and that's what worries us, because we didn't win these victories by just sitting around and asking, oh, come on, you ought to do this. I mean, we had to make a case. If necessary, we had to get up like against the big development and really push, but still with respect and facts. But
Yes.
and you're not going to get it without that.
You have to be brave enough to stand and fight, and you have to be
Yeah.
brave enough to, put in the work too. And I think that's,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
opposite with a lot of people, and that's not something you can blame anybody for not doing, right? I mean,
No.
it's hard, life's complex, right? But
Yeah.
someone has to do it, and if it's not
Yeah.
gonna be, it might as well be you, because who else is gonna be? You mean?
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. We were working, both of us, and most everybody on the Friends were working technically 40-hour-a-week jobs, which were sometimes 60-hour-a-week jobs. But somehow we found the time, maybe working till midnight or 1 a.m, to go over these facts and put these reports together and meet on the weekends and get all this pulled together and in a written form, this kind of thing. And it takes a lot of effort. And that's what worries us, is that are there enough young people out there willing, that care enough to, when you're in school, that's different. You got a big load, you got a lot of pressure, you have grades you have to make and projects you have to do. But what about when they get out? Then they get busy with family, which is fine.
On a new job.
And a new job. But
I think
somewhere along the line, maybe it's not your generation, maybe it's the one just before you, not even just say 10 years back, that are a little more settled, that need to, are they Are they going to?
I think it's everybody's responsibility. I think, you can always say that, you have something else going on, whether it's school right now,
Yeah,
whether it's work tomorrow, whether
yeah,
it's retirement and after that. I mean, I think you end up doing what you prioritize. And I think if you
hmm,
prioritize activism, if you prioritize fighting for something, that's what you could put your
yeah,
effort in.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's always going to be something, right? But
yeah,
something has to be, what you care
yeah.
about, right?
Right. So we hope there's enough out there to care
Yeah.
that much to keep, even to protect, because as we've mentioned, we've seen attacks on our state parklands. And we need people that will be out there willing to, if you will, stand up and holler like they did this time, so that the legislators will know this is not a popular thing back home.
Yeah.
I'm definitely optimistic. I mean,
Good.
I was one
Yeah.
of the lead organizers to save a parcel of woods on my campus last year, and we had 15,000 people sign a petition. We had 100 some people march with us, etc. I mean, the passion's
Good.
there, the groundwork's
Yeah.
there. Just,
Yeah.
we need to provide people a means to kind of just do it, and I think that's just
Yeah.
what the next generation's going to be about, is finding those leaders and
Yeah.
having those leaders implement
Yeah.
those things.
Maybe organizations like yours, the younger, need classes on how to be an effective advocate.
Yes.
I think
Florida Audubon puts those on every now and then online, but how to approach a legislature, this legislator, blah blah blah, because there is something to be said for how you do it, whether you're going to have an ear that's even half cocked in your direction is another question when you get to the decision makers. So
Having news conferences opposing thing is not always the best way to approach
yeah,
to solve a problem.
yeah. So
Get too much emotion.
yeah, we never asked for a news conference. The TV people always came to us to find out if it was making the papers. Well, what? But we never. Yeah, they stink. They're bums. We never did anything like that.
No.
So, yeah. So it's a challenge.
absolutely, and I guess
I'm sure the young people today are up to it if they're willing to do it. So
I'm not sure they're studying history. I know we met some young people in their late 20s. They didn't know what came first, World War II or Vietnam. Well, that's frightening.
yeah, yeah.
That
Then they say, "Oh, I get
confused.
Vietnam, Korea, World War II. I get them all mixed up." And well, of course, we lived through them all, so it's easier for us. But not a history. But that goes back again. In a way, it relates to the environment, that if you don't pay attention to environmental disasters that have happened elsewhere, they're going to happen again. If you don't pay attention to what's happened with authoritarianism in the past, then you're going to repeat that again. And we don't know who it was, but there's some saying out there that the only thing we learn from history is that we learned nothing from history. So let's hope that's not true.
hopefully not.
Yeah.
I guess the final question I'll ask you to kind of wrap up the interview is, to anybody that's listening, right? Any kind of last words of wisdom? Any kind of, what do you have to say to the audience? Kind of any final thoughts?
Well,
Try and find more than one reference to your answer to a question.
My answer, I guess, would be, again, using a cliche, you can't foul your own nest and expect to survive. You can't continue to exploit all the resources and not do anything to effectively control or change things, because it's finite, it's not infinite. And the Dust Bowl is a good example. But if we keep acting with the environment as a whole and our water resources like people did the passenger pigeon and the buffalo, our civilization's going to be in deep trouble. And well, I'm speaking environmentally. There are many other things across that board, of course, that could impact before that. But it ain't nice to fool with Mother Nature.